What's the worst defense you've seen someone make in a court? I never touched my daughters. I never hurt my daughters. Never would I sexually abuse my daughters. Except that one time at the cabin. The guy became an instant meme in our country language. A domestic abuse case. A husband was the accused. The couple was in their late 70s or early 80s. When asked if he did indeed abuse his wife, the husband started complaining that some 40 years ago the wife pretended to be ill and he had to do the laundry all by himself. As if he expected the judge to just go, oh okay, I guess that's cool then. My sister told the judge that the light wasn't that red. Then he said he was going to suspend her license and she said, but my dad already took it away. I took a guy to small claims court. His defense was I didn't have the product, so I couldn't ship it to him. Obviously. The judge was like, but you took his money. The guy, yay. So I could buy the product and ship it to him. Judge, did you do that? Guy, not yet. Judge, do you have his money? Guy, no. I had an emergency and had to spend it. That was that. I won. Edit. Someone gave me gold. Thanks. This was a very stressful period of my life. I defended a guy on a DUI that jumped into the backseat after he got pulled over and claimed someone else was driving. He was the only one in the car. I saw this go down while waiting for my traffic ticket. Judge, so you were seen pulling a stop sign out of the ground and throwing it in the river. Accused, yes, sir. J, were you drunk? A, no, sir. J, the ticket says you were intoxicated. A, no, sir. J, okay, let's say I believe you. I will throw out this drunk and disorderly charge. A, thank you, sir. J, but I will have to charge you with the destruction of government property and endangering the public. That comes with at least a year in jail. So I'll ask one more time. Were you drunk? A, yes, sir. Very drunk, sir. It says here you were drinking and driving, judge. No sir, I drank then I drove. A guilty guy. I knew a guy who said that the police who responded to the domestic that he had perpetrated had no right to charge him with meth possession since the meth was so pure, no one could have seen it. Of course his DNA, semen, was in the alley behind his apartment, where a sexual assault took place. Where else would you expect to find your DNA except where you lived? A guy was in court for a DUI, and he insisted on taking the stand when his lawyer advised him not to. Turned out he wanted the judge to know the cop who arrested him was just some rude kid trying to be a big shit and he wasn't even drunk. He'd only had 2 bottles of wine with dinner. His lawyer interrupted him to try to get him to stop talking and he told his lawyer to shut up. Then the judge advised him to listen to his lawyer, and he told the judge, I'm not a damn child. Don't interrupt me, and the judge just smiled and sat back and said, please proceed. We all knew it was over for this guy. He got maxed on the charge and advised in the future if he was going to pay for a lawyer, he should listen to him. I watched a friend try a DWI case. Her client testified that she wasn't drunk while driving and therefore not guilty because she was actually high on meth at the time. My friend put her head down and started hitting her head against the desk. I was in traffic court and the first guy to go before the judge got pulled over doing some crazy speed, like 140 miles per hour. The judge essentially told the guy to say he wouldn't ever do it again and that it was a mistake, and in return, the judge would drop the ticket fee and the points on his record. The guy countered with, well, I drive that fast all the time, so I'm really good at it, and I don't think it was dangerous at all because of how good of a driver I am. Guy could have walked out totally free, but instead got a $2,500 FNE and 2 points on his record. Friend of mine once got a ticket for leaving her car standing in the marked off no parking zone in front of a grocery store, which she thought was outrageous because she was just running in to get a pack of smokes. Then she saw how much the ticket was for. Something like $120, which she thought was just ridiculous because damn it, she was just running in for a pack of smokes. I mean, come on. How is that worth $120? So her plan was to go to court and contest the ticket and point out to the judge how ridiculous that was and offer to compromise at like maybe $40 because for Pete's sake, She was just running in for a pack of smokes, and let's be reasonable here. Yes, her plan was to haggle with the judge over how much the ticket should be worth. So she goes to court and sits there most of the day waiting for her case to be called. And eventually she gets bored and goes outside to grab a smoke and hang out. And while she's out there, her case is called. She missed the whole thing. Didn't even get to try the whole come on. $120? For that? Come on. I'll give you $40, and even that's highway robbery defense on the judge, and got hit for the full value of the ticket plus court costs. Ted Bundy jumping out of the courthouse window and running probably didn't do much to convince people he was innocent. Mine is sort of a worst best defense sort of scenario. A few years ago I was doing jury duty at Crown Court in the Old Bailey. It was to judge this gang violence case against a Sri Lankan gang in London. Essentially, someone had gotten attacked with a machete in a car park and left for dead. There were 6 suspects in this trial, 2 of which had left the country. What was very clear was that all 6 of these people were in complete cahoots. Every one of these 4 came to trial and blamed one other, so no one got blamed twice, but every one of them got the blame placed on them. Most of the evidence pointed to one of the guys in the trial, or one of the guys that had left the country. We had to vote not guilty because there was so much reasonable doubt against all of them that none of them could be prosecuted. Hands down, it's a tie between every sovereign citizen I've seen in court for a simple traffic violation like displaying expired plates or not registering a vehicle. The defense is always a stupid variation of "this court doesn't have jurisdiction because the wrong flag is displayed in the courtroom." Wasn't legit court, just court to change my last name. I was 14 and wanted to change my last name to my stepdad's. My biological father had to be present for the appointment and sign off on it. It went something like this. Judge, okay, if everyone will sign here your name will be changed. Bio dad, I'm not signing. Judge, why not? Bio dad, what if she gets pregnant out of wedlock? I want the baby to have my last name. Reminder that I was 14 years old, had never even kissed a boy, and I hadn't spoken to my dad in at least 5 years. The judge told him that was an irrelevant point and convinced him to sign the paper. I was glad to leave that part of my life behind me that day. I had a guy come into my jail with a robbery charge. He tried to explain that it was a misunderstanding because he just took a girl's money and kept the weed he was supposed to buy her for himself, so at most he was just a itty boyfriend. He made his situation worse by throwing in, "Did she tell you we're ducking? She was underage." I gave testimony as a health professional in a child custody case. The mother wanted to revoke the father's joint physical custody of the 8-year-old girl. The issue was that girl was asked to wipe her father's butt, apply lotion, and wash his genitals. The father's case was that because he was obese, fatigued, suffering from frequent diarrhea, and taxed to take care of his own hygiene without assistance, it was acceptable for her to do this as long as she wore gloves to avoid contracting hepatitis C from him. He also argued that it taught her a lesson about compassion and caring for those unable to do so themselves, and helped them to bond. Truly incredible. When my cousin was on a jury for a domestic case, the woman was put in the hospital by her boyfriend. She was in a coma for 18 months and couldn't even appear in court. Apparently the guy pushed her through a door and down the stairs. The guy's defense lawyer was actually trying to get him off with a lighter sentence, but then the guy opened his mouth and tried using the defense of, "If she would have just listened to me about not touching my gun, I wouldn't have gotten so mad. I didn't think the push was strong enough to put her through the door. I didn't mean to put her in a coma. It just happens." When my cousin told me this, I couldn't believe it. He ended up spending 3 years in jail and is no longer allowed to possess weapons. He was deemed mentally incapable of handling such things. My rapist's lawyer tried to argue that I wanted it. I was 8 when I was assaulted and had no idea what was going on or what he was doing. I overheard this guy tell the officer that yes, his car license is suspended, but I don't remember the correct terminology, the driving truck one isn't, and neither is his motor license. 3 people and the judge tried to explain that a suspended license means he's lost his privilege to drive in general and altogether. He kept fighting it and saying he wasn't fixing anything cause he's now driving a moped and that license is still okay. He came out with saying it's suspended for several old DUIs. Judge, why are you late? Defendant, my mama didn't wake me up. Judge, how old are you? Defendant 42. I only sexually assaulted her to make her feel more confident about her body as she was a big woman. Paul Gascoigne, ex-professional footballer. Today. Traffic court. I was the defendant. I show up in a suit and tie, and I'm waiting for my attorney. Judge is there. First part of the day is just making sure we all show up, and then the city attorney offers us a discount to plead guilty. That is, first time offenders have to sign up for a class on safe driving. Other than that, 30% off the top. Always fight your tickets, people. Anyway, I wasn't going to accept a plea deal cause I had an airtight case. Even my lawyer agreed. She was nice and actually listened to me and did the groundwork. So she shows up. I've already checked in and I refuse the initial offer. She then tells me to go wait outside while the city attorney tries, again, to get me to take the plea, and others. So the thing with traffic court is that the officer who wrote the ticket has to show up. My attorney was concerned because the guy who ticketed me typically shows up. So we go back into court and I'm sitting there and a group of guys come in all wearing ripped jeans and graphic shirts with dirty work boots. One of them looks familiar but I can't place him and figure it's just some more people waiting for tickets. They were the cops for the various cases. The judge was not amused. Their defense for their condition was that court was too early. Me and about 10 other people all had our tickets dismissed. I have the signed letter from the judge framed. He didn't have to say a thing. The poor city attorney though. He looked like he was about to die when the judge asked to speak to him. Like seriously. I honestly feel he felt he was walking to his execution. I was a juror on a DUI case. The driver had drank 6 vodka tonics and 3 beers in about 3 hours. His lawyer tried to argue that electronic interference is what caused him to fail the breathalyzer test. Traffic court. Guy said he had been speeding accidentally because the speedometer in the exotic foreign car he borrowed was marked in kilometers, not miles. The failed at math. Judge actually bought this defense, even though driving at 85 miles per hour would have been displayed as 136 kmph. Was sitting in court for traffic violation. The guy in front of me had a speeding ticket. To fight it he pulled out a large stack of papers, about 3/4 of an inch thick. The stack of papers was a law he pulled out from the 1990s from a different country. The poor judge had to read through. I only hit him. He fell off the building himself. A stupid person who Spartan kicked my uncle off a high school building. When I was watching my sister get sentenced for a minor offense, I listened to this court-appointed attorney talk about this 18-year-old girl who was in trouble for hitting her 50-year-old co-worker's car and not telling anyone until the co-worker noticed. The co-worker was yelling and carrying on about how this obviously pretty concerned 18-year-old girl wouldn't even acknowledge her at work anymore and how she found her cocky and disrespectful. Her court-appointed attorney basically just said she told me she was afraid of you and wanted to stay out of your way while this was being worked out. And the woman screamed, "That's ridiculous." As far as defending yourself goes, that wasn't a great way to do it. Story from driver's ed. Guy was in court for killing 2 relatively young gals while drunk. Defendant lawyer claimed that the young girls should be at fault because this man was drunk and the girl was sober. She should have had the reaction time to get out of the way. Pretty stupid defense. But in terms of the worst defense, nothing beats that. Absolutely appalling. Maybe not exactly a bad defense, but when I was going through the legal system with my ex-wife, there was a case before ours between a woman and her son. She was suing him over a bag of cat food. He took a bag and never paid her for it after he'd promised. He was just kind of like, "Yeah, I never paid her back and I probably never will." What's worse is the judge sounded so casual about it, like as if it was a normal thing for him to hear. Caught over a bag of cat food. Was in court for a traffic violation in the state of Florida. I'm sitting with a room full of people who are also contesting their tickets. There was a lady who looked like she was a waitress who got up to make her case in front of the judge. She point blank told the judge in front of the officer that ticketed her that her violation was bullet from a know-it-all cop. The judge then questioned the officer. "Your Honor, the defendant's car was going 75 and 35 and ran several stoplights." The judge then proceeded to ask why those charges were unreasonable. Her answer was parody level. "I was drinking last night and woke up late. I couldn't lose another job so I needed to be on time." She ended up paying $500 for wasting the judge's time in addition to her tickets. Not in court, but I saw a guy pulled over and cops were trying to give him a field sobriety test. He said he couldn't walk in a straight line toe to toe because he was a tugboat captain and his balance wasn't normal. We were on a bar patio within earshot and we ducking fell out. Even the cops were laughing right in this dipit's face. Needless to say, he got cuffed and stuffed. I was sitting on a jury for a case of reckless endangerment, or reckless driving, or both. Anyway, the defense was, it's not illegal, because he didn't mean to. He was ducked up on pills. I seriously hope that guy got an appeal for bad counsel. The writers of Rick and Morty animated and voices a court case that actually happened. I recommend taking a watch. It's not my fault for raping her. She was too attractive and I couldn't help myself. Yes, this was a real defense in a real court case. Yes, I rephrased it so it wasn't so long. Some guy sang a song about how sorry he was. It was honestly beautiful. He still killed a kid. Dumbus got life in prison. That kid who drunkenly mowed down a family of 4 argued that he was too spoiled to know the difference between right and wrong. Now, but my drunk ex-husband came to family court with his lawyer after I was asking for any remaining custody be taken and replaced with supervision. He was caught drinking and driving a second time. This time with my kids in the car. He's a cop, so there could be more that was covered up since the first time was on duty and the department tried to hide it. Anyway, his attorney said I was kicking a guy while he was down. That's what his legal defenses was. To me, that was the most idiotic argument regarding the safety of my kids. My ex literally goes to calls of drunk driving accidents where people died and still put our kids in danger. I thought it was a dear 17-year-old that was high and ran over someone with his car. As a public defender, you're thrown into a lot of itty cases with little hope of winning and with very little time to win them. My approach was to make any argument within the ethical rules that govern attorneys, which led me to a hilarious court appearance. My client was charged with possession of marijuana, a misdemeanor first offense that carries no jail time in my state. Client and his friend were smoking in a park. Some citizen reports it to the police, and the cops come and find them in their car after smoking. My client admits to the cop that he was smoking. Obviously, I'm thinking he's got no defense here. Other guy admits to smoking and gives the police the weed and pipe from his backpack. The entirety of the evidence was the admission and the physical evidence. So, I argue at trial, bench trial, no jury, with zero expectation of winning, that the state failed to prove my client ever possessed the marijuana. Your Honor, for all we know, the other guy at all times had possession of the marijuana. For all we know, he held the pipe to my client's lips and lit it for him. A discussion amongst myself, the judge, and the prosecutor ensues. Can you smoke marijuana and not be in possession of it? I got the decision a few months later, not guilty. I'm a reporter and I covered my first murder trial a few months ago. The defendant was a father who had been accused of shooting his 22-year-old daughter in the face. The father verified that the only people in the house at the time of the murder were him and his daughter. The defense obviously didn't have a lot to work with. But one of their arguments was the defendant couldn't have done this because the gun that was used isn't even a man's gun. Needless to say, the dude was found guilty. Edit. Spelling. I went to court because my next door neighbor tried to drive drunk, and when his truck wouldn't move, he got so angry that he threw several of the complex's large 6 inches landscaping rocks through the windshield. One missed and hit my car, leaving a large dent on the hood, several scrapes, and about $1,000 in damage. He then moved his truck a few spaces over, leaving a truck-shaped hole in the glass that was all over the ground next to my car. The rocks were still in his cab. The other rock was still on my hood. I called the police and this 32-year-old man, had his mom lie to the cops for him. For some reason, they found my story more plausible. At court, he showed up drunk. His lawyer asked for a delay, and the judge approved it, and promptly recused himself, as he himself had represented this man 15+ years earlier. I had a co-worker arrested for scamming me out of $1,500. He legit tried to countersue me for extortion. His extortion case was a recording of me saying, "Either give me my money back right now, or I'm calling the police and having you arrested for theft." Dash. In his warped mind, I was extorting him by asking for the money back that he stole from me. Story. As part of my university course, I had to sit in on a court case and create a court report. I turned up on a random day and asked to enter for my course and they allowed it. Turned out I was in a hearing about a man who was sexually abusing his stepdaughter and her friends. A key piece of evidence was a photo of his daughter tied to a bed and stripped. It was very obviously her. Her full face was in view and she also had a very recognizable and undeniable birthmark on her jaw. The man's defense was that this couldn't have been taken by him as he didn't recognize the girl in the photo. Judge damn near laughed at him there in the courtroom. My ex tried the "I didn't do it" defense during the restraining order hearing. The judge looked at him, already annoyed by him being late, said, "You're telling me you did not do the crime you confessed to the responding officer and plead guilty to 3 weeks ago? Honestly, if it wasn't a itch out to deal with, it would have been hilarious." In my law graduation, I was working as a trainee for the college, lawyer assistant, and I honestly saw that scene. Judge, where were you on Tuesday 11 p.m? Accused, I was working in the street selling pot. Judge, you were doing what? Accused, selling pot. The lawyer looked to him like, WTF. Recently, there was a court case over whether Colorado marijuana companies have to pay overtime. Federal law says yes, you have to pay hourly employees overtime. The lawyers for the company argued that since marijuana was federally illegal, federal overtime laws didn't apply. More than Helix's attorneys moved to dismiss the case on the grounds that a federal court had no jurisdiction to hear the case because Colorado's recreational marijuana industry is in violation of the Controlled Substances Act. I'm already breaking one law, so the rest of them don't apply, is the hottest legal take I've heard in a while. He shot the guy, admitted to shooting the guy, but said the police framed him for murder. He was defending himself and kicked off the trial by singing the Star-Spangled Banner and had to be taken out of the courtroom. Wasn't really a defense, but when I was there for some damn years back, there was a guy in front of me wearing the choice court apparel, combat boots, cut off camo khaki shorts, and a red shirt that said on the front, "Prison Hell," and on the back, "Inmate No. 666. Dude was going to speak to a judge wearing that ensemble. I wasn't there long enough to see him speak, but I mentioned this because that outfit had to have said everything for his case defense in ways he could only have dreamed of. I was waiting in court for a traffic ticket when a woman's case came up. She was able to prove that the time on the ticket, 9 p.m, was incorrect, since the officer, who was on the stand, admitted he worked the early shift that day. He had meant 9 a.m, but the argument was made that if he made one mistake on the ticket, there could be others. Judge agreed. Ticket dismissed. So then this good old homeboy contests his ticket next. Officer gets up, runs through the usual time of day, location, weather conditions, radar, etc. At the end of it, the homeboy just nods. The judge, patient as ever, asks if wants to challenge any part of the officer's statement. No, says homeboy. No, that was really good. So if you are admitting guilt, why did we just do this? The judge asked. Well, I figure that woman got off on a mistake. Maybe this cop would make a mistake too, explained homeboy. Did she? Asked the judge. Nope, said homeboy. Happened just like he said. Everyone in the courtroom laughed, and homeboy got a small fine.